The stagecoach lurched to a halt outside the general store in Salt Lake City, Utah Territory, and Penelope Vance pressed her gloved hand against the dusty window, her heart hammering with equal parts hope and terror as she glimpsed her new life waiting beyond the glass. She had traveled 3 weeks from Boston, answering an advertisement placed by a rancher named Quinn Calloway, who needed a wife to help manage his household and bring some refinement to his rough existence on the frontier. The year was 1876, and Penelope had left behind a world of afternoon teas and literature clubs, a world that had recently crumbled when her father's business collapsed and the family lost everything. At 22, unmarried and suddenly penniless, the mail-order bride arrangement had seemed like providence rather than desperation. The stagecoach driver opened the door, and Penelope gathered her worn traveling dress and stepped down onto the dusty street. Salt Lake City sprawled before her, a strange mixture of Mormon pioneers' sturdy buildings and the transient chaos of a frontier town. Men in dusty work clothes walked alongside women in calico dresses. Wagons rattled past. Somewhere a blacksmith's hammer rang against an anvil. "Miss Vance." A weathered man with kind eyes approached her. "I'm Harold Patterson, foreman at the Calloway Ranch. Mr. Calloway sent me to fetch you." Penelope nodded, trying to hide her disappointment that her intended husband had not come himself. Harold loaded her 2 trunks onto a wagon while she climbed aboard, smoothing her skirts and trying to calm her racing thoughts. The ride to the ranch took nearly 2 hours, the landscape growing more rugged and beautiful with each passing mile. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the warming spring. Sagebrush dotted the valley floor and she spotted antelope grazing in the distance. "Mr. Calloway is a good man," Harold said, breaking the silence. "Fair with his workers, honest in his dealings. Lost his parents to cholera 5 years back, been running the place alone since. Works himself near to death most days." "Is the ranch large?" Penelope asked. 5,000 acres, give or take. Runs about 3,000 head of cattle. It is good land, but hard." "Everything out here is hard, Miss Vance. You will learn that soon enough." When they finally arrived, Penelope's breath caught. The ranch house was larger than she had expected, a 2-story structure built of weathered wood with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Corrals spread out behind it, filled with horses. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing across rolling hills. Quinn Calloway emerged from the barn as the wagon pulled up. He was tall, perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair and sun-bronzed skin. His face was angular and handsome in a rugged way, though hardened by years of outdoor work. He wore dusty trousers, a worn cotton shirt, and scuffed boots. He removed his hat as he approached, revealing hair that needed cutting. "Miss Vance." His voice was deep, uncertain. "Welcome to the Circle C Ranch." Penelope stepped down from the wagon, acutely aware of how out of place she must look in her traveling dress with its tight bodice and fashionable bustle. "Mr. Calloway, thank you for having me." An awkward silence stretched between them. They had exchanged only 3 letters, enough to make the arrangement but not enough to truly know each other. "I will show you the house," Quinn said finally. "We can have the wedding tomorrow in town if that suits you. The circuit preacher is due through." "That would be fine," Penelope replied, though her voice wavered slightly. The interior of the house surprised her. While rustic, it was well built and spacious. The main room held a large stone fireplace, a dining table that could seat 8, and comfortable furniture that showed signs of care despite the dust. A kitchen occupied one end, well stocked though clearly the domain of someone who cooked for necessity rather than pleasure. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Quinn said, carrying her trunks as though they weighed nothing. "You can have the largest. I have been using the small one. The third is storage mostly." He set her belongings in a room with a large bed covered in a simple quilt, a wardrobe, and a window overlooking the mountains. It was plain but clean. "I will let you rest," Quinn said, lingering in the doorway. "Supper is at 6. Nothing fancy, I'm afraid, just beef and beans." After he left, Penelope sat on the bed and let out a long breath she had not realized she was holding. What had she done? She knew nothing about this man, this place, this life. In Boston, she had never cooked a meal, never cleaned a floor, never worked with her hands beyond needlepoint and watercolors. That evening she joined Quinn at the dining table. He had made an effort, washing up and changing into a clean shirt, his hair still damp from the basin. The meal was indeed simple but filling, and they ate in uncomfortable silence for several minutes before Quinn cleared his throat. "I know this is not what you are accustomed to," he said. "Harold mentioned you come from Boston, city life." "My circumstances changed," Penelope said carefully. "My father's shipping business failed. We lost our home, our position. When I saw your advertisement, it seemed like an opportunity for a new beginning." Quinn nodded slowly. "I will be honest with you, Miss Vance. I need help here. The house needs a woman's hand. I need someone who can manage the household, keep the books, help with the workers' meals during roundup. I can offer you security, a roof over your head, and I will treat you with respect. I will not expect more than you are willing to give." His directness was refreshing after the veiled conversations of Boston society. "I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Calloway. I should be honest as well. I have never managed a household of this nature. I can read and write, keep accounts, but I have never cooked for ranch hands or done heavy cleaning. I'm afraid you may find me quite useless." "Can you learn?" he asked. "I can try." Something shifted in his expression, a slight softening. "That is all anyone can ask." The next morning, they rode into Salt Lake City in Quinn's wagon. Penelope wore her best dress, a deep blue silk that had survived the journey relatively unscathed. Quinn wore a black suit that looked uncomfortable on his broad frame, as though he were a wild thing forced into civilization's constraints. The wedding was brief, performed by a traveling preacher in the small church, while Harold and his wife Martha served as witnesses. Penelope repeated the vows that bound her life to this stranger's, and when Quinn slipped a simple gold band on her finger, she felt the full weight of what she had done settle over her. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Quinn drove the wagon with steady competence, his strong hands easy on the reins. Penelope studied him from the corner of her eye, this man who was now her husband. His jaw was set, his eyes on the horizon, and she wondered what he was thinking. That night, Quinn was true to his word. He bid her good night at her bedroom door and retreated to his own room down the hall. Penelope lay awake in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, the lowing of distant cattle, the whisper of wind through sagebrush, and wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The next weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and mishaps. Martha Patterson, Harold's wife, came to the ranch to help Penelope learn the basics of frontier housekeeping. Martha was a sturdy woman of 40 with kind eyes and infinite patience, which Penelope tested thoroughly. Her first attempt at making bread resulted in lumps, so hard Quinn joked they could be used as weapons. Her laundry turned several of Quinn's shirts pink when a red bandana bled into the wash. She burned her hand on the stove, knocked over a bucket of fresh milk, and once left the chicken coop open, resulting in an hour-long chase to recapture the birds. Through it all, Quinn remained patient, though she often caught him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Was it disappointment? Regret? She could not tell. One evening, about 3 weeks after the wedding, Penelope overheard Quinn talking with Harold in the barn. She had gone to gather eggs and approached quietly, not meaning to eavesdrop. "She is not cut out for this life," Harold was saying. "Too soft for this hard land. Maybe you should send her back to Boston, boss. Find someone more suited to ranch work." Penelope's heart sank. She pressed herself against the barn wall, waiting for Quinn's agreement. "That is what this hard land needs," Quinn said instead, his voice firm. "Someone soft. Someone who sees beauty instead of just work. Someone who has not been beaten down by the roughness of it all." There was a pause. "She is trying, Harold, trying hard. You should see her in the kitchen before dawn, reading those recipes Martha wrote out for her. She is covered in bruises from learning to work, but she does not complain. She has more strength than you give her credit for." Penelope's throat tightened with emotion. She slipped away before they could discover her, but Quinn's words echoed in her mind for days afterward. Something shifted in her after that. She stopped seeing her struggles as failures and started seeing them as lessons. She woke earlier, worked harder, asked more questions. Martha taught her to make sourdough starter and how to render lard. She learned to tell when the stove was hot enough for baking, how to beat rugs clean, how to preserve vegetables for the winter. Her hands, once soft and white, developed calluses. Her skin tanned despite her bonnet. Her muscles grew stronger from hauling water and kneading bread and scrubbing floors. Quinn noticed the changes. He started finding excuses to be near the house more often, coming in for coffee in the afternoon, lingering over supper to talk about the ranch or asking about her day. Penelope found herself looking forward to these moments, to the deep rumble of his voice and the rare smile that transformed his serious face. One afternoon, in late June, Penelope decided to bring Quinn lunch in the far pasture where he was mending fence. She packed bread, cheese, and cold chicken into a basket, along with a jar of lemonade she had made from precious lemons ordered from California. She rode one of the gentler horses, a mare named Daisy, following the directions Quinn had given her that morning. The day was beautiful, warm but not oppressively hot, with a breeze carrying the scent of sagebrush and wildflowers. She found Quinn working shirtless in the sun, his muscled back gleaming with sweat as he hammered a fence post into the hard ground. Something fluttered in Penelope's stomach at the sight, a feeling she had never experienced before. He looked up at her approach, surprise crossing his face. "Penelope, is something wrong?" It still startled her when he used her first name, though they had been married nearly 2 months. "Nothing wrong. I thought you might be hungry." Quinn wiped his face with his discarded shirt and pulled it back on, though he left it unbuttoned. They sat in the shade of a lone cottonwood tree and Penelope spread out the lunch. "This is good," Quinn said around a mouthful of bread. "Really good." "You made this, all by myself," Penelope said with pride. No pink shirts were harmed in the process. Quinn laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that made Penelope's heart skip. She realized she had never heard him truly laugh before. "I am sorry about that," she said. "About all my mistakes these past weeks." Everyone makes mistakes when they are learning something new. Quinn took a long drink of lemonade, his eyes closing with appreciation. "You have come a long way, Penelope. I see how hard you work." "I overheard you," she admitted. "In the barn with Harold, when he said I was too soft." Quinn's expression turned serious. "I meant what I said. This land can be brutal. It makes people hard, sometimes too hard. What you bring here, your gentleness, your different way of seeing things, it matters. It is valuable." "I want to be a true partner to you," Penelope said softly. "Not just a housekeeper you married." Quinn's hand moved across the blanket, his fingers brushing hers. "You are more than that already." The touch sent electricity through Penelope's body. She looked up and found Quinn watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, nothing like the chaste peck at their wedding ceremony. Penelope's eyes fluttered closed and she kissed him back, her hand coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart pounding. When they pulled apart, Quinn's eyes were bright. "I have wanted to do that for weeks." "Why did you not?" Penelope asked breathlessly. "I wanted you to want it too, to want me, not just the security I offer." "I do want you," Penelope whispered. "I think I have been falling in love with you, Quinn Calloway." His smile was like sunrise. "I know I have been falling in love with you, Penelope Calloway." They kissed again, longer this time, and when they finally returned to the ranch that evening, something fundamental had changed between them. That night, Quinn did not retreat to his own room, and Penelope welcomed him into hers with open arms and an open heart. The seasons turned, summer blazing into autumn. Penelope continued to grow into her role as ranch wife, but she also began to make the ranch truly hers. She planted a vegetable garden, bringing fresh produce to the table. She made curtains for the windows from fabric ordered from the general store. She learned to ride better and sometimes accompanied Quinn when he checked on the cattle. She also began teaching some of the ranch hands to read in the evenings, holding lessons at the dining table. Many of them had never had the opportunity for education, and they were eager students. Quinn would sometimes join them, sitting in the background with a cup of coffee, watching his wife with pride. The first real test of their marriage came in October when early snow caught a group of cattle in the high pastures. Quinn and the ranch hands rode out in brutal conditions to bring them down before they froze or starved. Penelope waited anxiously at the ranch house, keeping coffee hot and preparing the barn with extra hay in case any animals needed special care. When Quinn finally returned 3 days later, exhausted and half-frozen, she helped him inside and into a hot bath, her worry transforming into relief and then anger. "You could have died out there," she said, scrubbing his back perhaps more vigorously than necessary. "The cattle needed to be saved," Quinn replied through chattering teeth. "I needed you to be safe," Penelope countered. "Those cattle are not worth your life." Quinn turned to look at her, water dripping from his hair. "This ranch is our future, Penelope, our children's future. I have to protect it. Our children will need a father more than they will need a few extra head of cattle." Something flickered in Quinn's eyes. "You think about that, having children with me?" Penelope's cheeks flushed. "Of course I do, don't you?" Quinn pulled her down into the bath, dress and all, making her shriek with surprise. "I think about it all the time," he said against her ear. "Teaching a son to ride, watching a daughter help you in the garden, a house full of love and laughter." Penelope kissed him, no longer caring that she was soaking wet. "Then promise me you will be more careful. A ranch can be rebuilt. You cannot be replaced." "I promise," Quinn said solemnly. Winter settled over the ranch in earnest, bringing snow and bitter cold. Penelope had never experienced winter like this, where the very air seemed to freeze and the wind howled like a living thing. But the house was warm. The pantry was stocked with her preserved vegetables and Martha's teaching, and Quinn was there every night to hold her close. Christmas was simple but joyful. Penelope made a special dinner and gifted Quinn a wool scarf she had knitted, her fingers clumsy at the unfamiliar task, but her effort evident in every stitch. Quinn gave her a beautiful saddle, tooled leather with her initials worked into the design. "For spring," he said, "so you can ride with me more often, if you want to." "I would love that," Penelope said, meaning it. They invited Harold and Martha for Christmas dinner, along with 3 of the ranch hands who had nowhere else to go. The house rang with conversation and laughter, and Penelope felt a contentment she had never known in Boston's grand parlors. Spring came late in 1877, but when it finally arrived, it transformed the landscape. Wildflowers bloomed across the valley, painting the ground in purple, yellow, and white. Newborn calves wobbled on unsteady legs. The world felt full of possibility. Penelope discovered she was pregnant in April. She had suspected for a few weeks, the signs subtle but unmistakable. When she told Quinn, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "Careful," Penelope protested, though she was laughing too. "You will make me dizzy." "I cannot believe it," Quinn said, setting her down gently. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Penelope asked, suddenly nervous. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Quinn said, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "You have given me everything, Penelope. A real home, love, and now this." The pregnancy was not easy. Morning sickness kept Penelope in bed for weeks, and Martha had to return to help manage the household. But Quinn was attentive and patient, bringing her dry toast in the mornings and reading to her in the evenings when she was too tired to keep her eyes open. As summer arrived and Penelope's belly grew round, she found she could not do all the physical work she had become accustomed to. It frustrated her, this return to helplessness. "I feel useless again," she complained to Quinn one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "You are growing our child," Quinn said, his hand covering hers. "That is the most important work there is." "You don't understand," Penelope said. "I finally felt like I belonged here, like I was truly a part of this place. Now I am back to being soft, needing help with everything." Quinn was quiet for a moment. "You know what I have learned this past year? Strength is not just about how much you can lift or how long you can work. It is about adapting, persevering, loving even when things are hard. You are the strongest person I know, Penelope. You left everything familiar and built a new life here. You learned skills you never imagined needing. You loved me even when I was just a rough cowboy who did not know how to talk to a lady. You were never just anything," Penelope said softly. "From the moment I met you, I saw your kindness, your dedication, your strength. I wanted to be worthy of you." "You have always been worthy of me," Quinn said. "I am the one who needed to become worthy of you." Their son was born in November during the first snowstorm of the season. The labor was long and difficult, with Martha and a midwife from town attending while Quinn paced the floor downstairs, wearing a path in the wood. When Martha finally called him up and placed the squalling infant in his arms, Quinn wept openly. "He is perfect," he whispered, counting tiny fingers and toes. "What should we name him?" Penelope asked, exhausted but radiant. "Thomas," Quinn said. "After your father. So something good comes from the name, new memories to replace the painful ones." Penelope's eyes filled with tears. Quinn had never met her father, knew him only from her stories, but he understood what the gesture meant. Thomas Calloway was a healthy, loud baby who kept them up at all hours. But Penelope had never been happier, watching Quinn rock their son and sing off key lullabies, seeing this hard-working rancher transform into a gentle father. Winter passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes and stolen moments of sleep. Spring brought new challenges as Penelope tried to balance caring for Thomas with managing the household. She was constantly exhausted, constantly worried she was failing at everything. One particularly difficult day, when Thomas had been crying for hours and nothing Penelope did seem to help, Quinn found her in tears in the nursery. "I cannot do this," she sobbed. "I am a terrible mother. He will not stop crying and I don't know what is wrong." Quinn took Thomas and examined him carefully, then laughed. "He has a gas bubble. Watch." He positioned Thomas against his shoulder and patted his back until the baby let out a tremendous burp and immediately stopped crying, Penelope stared. How did you know that? One of the ranch hands has 6 younger siblings. He taught me. Quinn handed the now peaceful baby back to her. You are not a terrible mother, Penelope. You are learning just like you learned everything else about this life, and just like before, you will master it. What if I do not? Penelope whispered. Then we will figure it out together, Quinn said simply. That is what marriage is, what family is. We do not have to be perfect. We just have to keep trying and keep loving each other. As Thomas grew, the ranch prospered. Quinn hired more hands and expanded the herd. Penelope began keeping the ranch books, her education in Boston finally proving useful as she managed accounts and corresponded with cattle buyers. She discovered she had a head for business, finding ways to increase profits and reduce costs. You are making me rich, Quinn joked one evening, looking over the ledgers. Making us secure, Penelope corrected. So we never have to worry about Thomas's future or any other children we might have. Quinn looked up sharply. Are you saying what I think you are saying? Penelope smiled. I am about 3 months along, I believe. Their daughter arrived the following spring, a peaceful birth that took only a few hours. They named her Sarah, and she had Penelope's green eyes and Quinn's dark hair. Thomas, now a sturdy toddler, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help feed or hold her. The ranch house rang with children's laughter and the organized chaos of family life. Penelope had never imagined she could be this happy, this fulfilled. The soft Boston lady who had arrived in Salt Lake City 3 years ago seemed like a different person, though Penelope knew she was simply a fuller version of who she had always been meant to be. One evening in late summer, when Thomas was 3 and Sarah was 6 months old, Penelope and Quinn sat on the porch after putting the children to bed. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and a cool breeze brought relief from the day's heat. You ever miss Boston? Quinn asked, his arm around her shoulders. Penelope considered the question seriously. I miss certain things. The concerts, the libraries, some of the conveniences, but miss the life I had there. No, this is my home now. You and the children, this ranch, even this hard land that challenged me so much at first, I would not trade any of it. Even when you burned your first batch of bread, Quinn teased. Even then, Penelope laughed. Every mistake, every difficulty, it all led me here. Led me to become who I am now. And who is that? Quinn asked softly. Someone strong enough for this life, Penelope said. Not despite my softness, but because of it. You taught me that. You saw value in qualities I thought were weaknesses. You taught me something too, Quinn said. That strength without gentleness is just brutality. That this hard land needs soft hands to truly flourish. You brought beauty here, love, warmth. You made a house into a home. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Inside, Thomas called out in his sleep, and Sarah made soft baby sounds. The sounds of their family, their life together. I love you, Quinn Calloway, Penelope said. I love you, Penelope Calloway, Quinn replied. My mail-order bride who turned out to be exactly what I needed, even if I did not know it when I placed that advertisement. Your wife, Penelope corrected gently. Not mail order anymore, just yours. Just mine, Quinn agreed, kissing her temple. And I am just yours. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and challenge. The ranch grew, and so did the family. 2 more children arrived, another son they named William, and a second daughter named Elizabeth. The house that had once seemed too large for just Quinn now overflowed with life and love. Thomas grew into a serious boy who followed his father everywhere, learning ranch work with dedication. Sarah was adventurous and wild, more likely to be found climbing trees than playing with dolls. William was gentle and loved books, often sitting with Penelope as she read. Elizabeth was still a baby, but she had a smile that could light up any room. Penelope expanded her teaching program, holding regular classes for ranch hands and their families. She also started a lending library, ordering books from back east and making them available to anyone in the area who wanted to read. Quinn built her a small schoolhouse on the ranch property, and soon children from neighboring ranches were coming for lessons. "You are changing this whole territory," Quinn told her proudly, "bringing education and culture to places that never had it before." "I am just sharing what I know," Penelope said, "the way Martha shared her knowledge with me." Martha and Harold had become like family over the years. They were godparents to Thomas and regular fixtures at Sunday dinners. Martha taught Penelope more than cooking and cleaning. She taught her about frontier medicine, about reading the weather, about the complex social structures of ranch life. When Harold's health began to fail in 1883, Quinn and Penelope took him and Martha into the main house, giving them the downstairs bedroom and caring for them as they had once cared for Penelope. Harold passed peacefully in his sleep that winter, surrounded by people who loved him. At the funeral, Quinn gave the eulogy, his voice thick with emotion. "Harold taught me everything I know about running a ranch, but more than that, he taught me about loyalty, about integrity, about treating people with respect regardless of their station. He was foreman, teacher, and friend. He will be greatly missed." Martha stayed on at the ranch, helping Penelope with the children and becoming a beloved grandmother figure to them all. She lived to see Thomas marry at 21, watched Sarah become a teacher herself, saw William head off to university back east, and held Elizabeth's first child, making her a great-grandmother in spirit if not in blood. The ranch faced challenges over the years. Drought came in 1885, forcing them to sell off part of the herd. A range fire in 1887 destroyed several outbuildings and threatened the main house before rain finally came. Cattle prices fluctuated wildly, and competition from larger operations squeezed smaller ranchers. But Quinn and Penelope weathered each storm together, their partnership stronger than any challenge. Penelope's business acumen helped them diversify, adding sheep and even some crops to the ranch's income sources. Quinn's willingness to adapt and try new methods kept them competitive. They became pillars of the community, known for their fairness and generosity. When drought struck, they let neighbors water their herds at Circle C wells. When families fell on hard times, Penelope's school provided free meals along with education. They employed ranch hands others would not hire, giving chances to men trying to rebuild their lives. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1896, Quinn took Penelope back to Salt Lake City for a proper celebration. The territory had grown and changed dramatically since she had first arrived, with electric lights now illuminating some streets and the railroad bringing even more settlers and commerce. They had dinner at the finest restaurant in the city, and Quinn presented her with a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a pendant shaped like a sagebrush flower. "For the woman who brought softness to the hard land," he said as he fastened it around her neck, "and made both of us better for it." Penelope touched the pendant, her eyes bright with tears. 20 years ago, I stepped off that stagecoach terrified and uncertain. I had no idea how to be a rancher's wife, no idea if I would survive this life." "What would you tell that young woman if you could?" Quinn asked. "That every challenge will be worth it," Penelope said. "That the man waiting for her will become the love of her life. That she is stronger than she knows, and that being soft is not the same as being weak. That she will build a life more fulfilling than anything she left behind." Quinn took her hand across the table. I would tell the man I was that the woman coming on that stagecoach will save him, that she will teach him how to truly live, not just work, that her softness will not be a burden but a blessing, that loving her will be the best decision he ever makes. They kissed across the table, uncaring of the other diners watching them with indulgent smiles. That night in their hotel room, Penelope stood at the window looking out at the city lights. Quinn came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You remember our wedding night?" he asked. "How nervous we both were. We were practically strangers," Penelope said, leaning back against him. "I barely knew what you looked like in good light." "And now?" Quinn asked. "Now I know every scar on your body and the story behind each one. I know you take your coffee black and hate wearing suits. I know you sing to the horses when you think no one is listening, and that you cry at Christmas every year when the children open their presents. I know your dreams, your fears, your heart. You are not a stranger, Quinn Calloway. You are my home." Quinn turned her to face him, his eyes intense. "You walked into my life and changed everything. The ranch was just work before you. Now it is a legacy we are building for our children. This house was just shelter. You made it a home full of love and laughter. I was just surviving. You taught me how to truly live." They made love tenderly, with the deep intimacy of two people who had built a life together through all its joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges. 20 years had added silver to their hair and lines to their faces, but it had also deepened their love into something unshakable. The next morning, as they prepared to return to the ranch, Penelope realized she was eager to get home. Not to the city life she had once known, but to the ranch, to their children, to the land that had once seemed so harsh, but now felt like it was part of her very soul. They arrived home to chaos. Thomas and his wife Emma had come for Sunday dinner, bringing their 2 young children. Sarah was there with her fiancé, a school teacher from the next county. William had brought a friend home from university. Elizabeth, now 15, was trying to organize everyone while Martha directed operations from her rocking chair. The house was full of noise and life, children running through rooms where Penelope had once walked so carefully, trying not to disturb anything. The kitchen where she had burned that first bread now produced meals that brought the family together. The porch where she and Quinn had shared so many sunsets now held grandchildren playing games. That evening, after everyone had left and the house was finally quiet, Quinn found Penelope in Thomas's old room, which she had converted into a sewing room. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how much has changed," Penelope said, "and how grateful I am for all of it." "Even the hard parts?" Quinn asked. "Especially the hard parts," Penelope said. "They made us who we are, they made our love stronger." Quinn pulled her close. "I never imagined when I placed that advertisement that I would find someone like you. I thought I just needed a housekeeper, someone practical and efficient. And instead you got someone who could not even make bread," Penelope laughed. "I got someone who saw possibility where I saw only work. Someone who brought beauty and culture to a rough ranch. Someone who loved me not for what I could provide but for who I was. Someone who became my partner in every sense of the word. You gave me a home when I had lost everything," Penelope said softly. "You saw value in me when I felt worthless. You taught me that I could be strong and soft at the same time. You loved me through every mistake and celebrated every triumph. How could I not love you with everything I have?" They stood together in the quiet house, holding each other as they had held each other through everything life had brought them. Outside, the Utah night was vast and beautiful, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. The land that had once seemed so hard and unforgiving now felt like a blessing, a place where they had built something lasting and true. The years continued to pass. bringing both joy and sorrow. Martha passed peacefully in her sleep in 1899, and the whole community turned out for her funeral. Penelope spoke at the service, her voice steady despite her tears. Martha was more than a friend to me. She was a teacher, a mother figure, a guide when I was lost in this new life. She taught me everything I needed to know to survive and thrive here. But more than that, she taught me about grace, about kindness, about facing life's challenges with strength and humor. I would not be who I am today without her influence. Sarah married her school teacher and moved to Denver, where she opened a school for girls. William became a lawyer and settled in Salt Lake City, using his education to help settlers navigate land disputes and legal challenges. Elizabeth surprised everyone by becoming one of the first female veterinarians in the territory, working primarily with ranch animals. Thomas stayed at the ranch, working alongside Quinn, and eventually taking over more of the daily operations as Quinn's joints began to ache from decades of hard work. Emma fit seamlessly into the family, learning from Penelope just as Penelope had once learned from Martha. By 1900, Quinn and Penelope had 7 grandchildren and another on the way. The ranch had grown to over 10,000 acres and was one of the most successful operations in the territory. But more than the land or the cattle, they had built a legacy of family, of education, of treating people with dignity and respect. On a warm summer evening in 1901, Quinn and Penelope celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with all their children and grandchildren present. The house could barely contain everyone, with tables set up on the porch and yard. The meal was a community effort, with each family bringing dishes that represented their own homes and traditions. After dinner, Thomas stood to offer a toast. 25 years ago, my father made the best decision of his life. He brought my mother here to this ranch to build a life with him. And in doing so, he gave us all a gift. He showed us what real partnership looks like, what enduring love means. They have weathered droughts and fires, economic downturns and personal losses. Through it all, their love has been the foundation that held this family together. Sarah raised her glass. Mother, you taught me that being gentle does not mean being weak. That bringing culture and education to a rough place is just as important as any other work. You made this ranch more than just a business. You made it a home. William cleared his throat, emotional as always. Father, you showed me that real strength includes knowing when to adapt, when to listen, when to let love guide your decisions. You and Mother together are the best example of marriage I have ever seen. Elizabeth grinned. You two are disgustingly in love after 25 years. It is wonderful and inspiring and gives us all something to aspire to. Quinn stood, pulling Penelope up with him. 25 years ago, I was a lonely rancher who thought I just needed someone to manage my house. I had no idea I was about to meet the love of my life. Penelope, you have given me everything. 4 incredible children, 7 beautiful grandchildren, a home filled with love and a life worth living. Every day with you has been a gift. Penelope wiped her eyes. Quinn Calloway, you told Harold once that I was soft, and that was what this hard land needed. You were right, though not in the way either of us understood then. This land needed someone who would not just survive it but transform it. And you needed someone who would see past the rough exterior to the kind, loving man underneath. We needed each other, and somehow, across all those miles and through the uncertainty, we found each other. I love you more today than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. They kissed while their family cheered and applauded. The grandchildren made faces at the display of affection, but they were smiling too, absorbing the lesson that love could last, that it could grow deeper with time rather than fade. As the evening wore on and the younger children were put to bed inside, the adults sat around a bonfire, sharing stories and laughter. Penelope watched her family, this beautiful, chaotic, loving group of people who existed because she had taken a chance on a mail-order marriage to a stranger. She thought about the frightened young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach 25 years ago, worried she would not be good enough, strong enough, brave enough for this life. She wished she could tell that young woman not to be afraid, that everything would work out better than she could possibly imagine. The years after the anniversary continued to bring changes. The Utah Territory finally achieved statehood, something Quinn and Penelope celebrated with pride. The ranch kept evolving with new methods and technologies, though they always maintained the core values they had built their life around: hard work, fair dealing, and treating everyone with respect. Quinn's hair turned fully white and his step grew slower, but his mind remained sharp, and his love for Penelope never wavered. He could often be found on the porch in the afternoons, watching the land he had spent his life working, a smile on his face. Penelope developed arthritis in her hands, making the sewing and writing she loved more difficult, but she adapted as she always had. She dictated letters when writing became too painful and taught her granddaughters to sew so the skill would continue. They faced health scares and difficult times, but they faced them together, as they had faced everything else. When Quinn had a bad fall from his horse in 1905, breaking his leg, Penelope nursed him back to health with the same determination she had once applied to learning to make bread. When Penelope came down with pneumonia in 1907, Quinn sat by her bedside day and night until she recovered. "You cannot leave me yet," he told her during her fever. "We still have too much life to live together." And she recovered, as though his will alone could pull her back from the brink. Their 30th anniversary was quieter, just the two of them and Thomas's family at the ranch. Quinn had arranged for a photographer to come from Salt Lake City, wanting to capture the moment. The resulting portrait showed a couple aged by time but radiating contentment and love, surrounded by 3 generations of family. On a crisp autumn day in 1910, Quinn and Penelope took a ride across the ranch as they had done countless times before. They moved slower now, their horses walking rather than cantering, but the beauty of the land had not diminished. They stopped at the cottonwood tree where Quinn had first kissed her all those years ago. It had grown tall and majestic, its leaves golden in the fall sun. "You remember?" Quinn asked, dismounting carefully and helping Penelope down. "I remember everything about that day," Penelope said. "You had been mending fence. I brought you lunch. I was so nervous about riding out alone." "I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen," Quinn said. "Sitting there under this tree in your calico dress with the sun in your hair. I knew then that I was falling in love with you, and it terrified me." "Why did it terrify you?" Penelope asked. "Because I thought you might leave," Quinn admitted. "Go back to Boston where life was easier, where you would not have to work so hard. I thought you would realize you had made a mistake marrying me." "The only mistake would have been not marrying you," Penelope said firmly. "This life we built together, this family, this love, it is worth every challenge, every difficulty. I have never regretted coming here, not for one single moment." Quinn pulled her close, and they stood together under the cottonwood tree. 2 people who had started as strangers and become soulmates, who had built a legacy that would outlast them both. As they rode back to the ranch house, Penelope looked at the land stretching out around them and marveled at how it had changed. Fields now grew where only sagebrush had once existed. Sturdy fences marked pastures. The ranch house had been expanded twice to accommodate their growing family. But the mountains still rose in the distance, eternal and beautiful, and the sky was still vast and endless. That evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set, Quinn took Penelope's hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" Penelope asked. "For saying yes to a stranger's advertisement. For being brave enough to come here. For being patient while I learned how to be a proper husband. For loving me, for loving this land, for building this life with me. For being exactly what this hard land needed." "You are what I needed," Penelope said. "A man who saw strength in gentleness, who valued what I could bring rather than just what I could do. A man who loved me enough to let me be myself while helping me become more than I ever imagined I could be. A partner, a friend, a lover, a father to my children. Everything I needed, you have been." They sat in comfortable silence as stars began to appear, just as they had done thousands of times before. Inside, they could hear Thomas and Emma putting their children to bed, the sound of family continuing in the house they had built together. Quinn and Penelope lived many more years, watching their grandchildren grow and eventually great-grandchildren arrive. They celebrated 50 years of marriage in 1926, surrounded by a family that had grown to include dozens of descendants. The ranch had passed primarily to Thomas, but all their children had a stake in it, a piece of the legacy their parents had built. When Quinn finally passed in 1928 at the age of 82, he died peacefully in his sleep with Penelope beside him, as she had been for 52 years. The entire community mourned the loss of a man who had helped build the territory into a state, who had treated everyone fairly, who had loved deeply and lived well. At his funeral, Penelope spoke with a steady voice despite her broken heart. Quinn Calloway was a cowboy, a rancher, a businessman. But more than anything, he was a good man. He saw value in people others overlooked. He gave chances to those who needed them. He loved his family fiercely and his land deeply. He taught me what real strength looks like, and he loved me every single day of our marriage. I will miss him until I draw my last breath, but I am grateful for every moment we had together. Penelope lived 2 more years, spending her time surrounded by family, sharing stories of the early days, passing down recipes and wisdom and love. She still walked slowly through the ranch most days, touching the fence posts Quinn had set, the trees they had planted together, the land they had worked side by side to build into something lasting. On a spring morning in 1930, Penelope passed away quietly in her sleep at the age of 76. Her children found her with a smile on her face, and clutched in her hand was a faded photograph of a young cowboy and his mail-order bride on their wedding day, both looking uncertain but hopeful about the future ahead of them. They buried her next to Quinn on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could rest together beneath the vast Utah sky. The headstone bore a simple inscription that Thomas had chosen: Penelope Vance Calloway, 1854–1930. She brought softness to a hard land and made it bloom. The ranch continued for generations, passing down through the family Quinn and Penelope had created. Their descendants scattered across the country, but the Circle C Ranch remained, a testament to what 2 people could build when they chose to love each other despite their differences, to see strength in unexpected places, to believe that softness and hardness could not only coexist, but complement each other perfectly. The story of the mail-order bride from Boston and the cowboy who saw her value became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren. It was a story of courage and adaptation, of love growing from uncertain beginnings into something unshakable. It was a story of 2 people who needed each other in ways they did not initially understand, who built something beautiful in a harsh landscape, who proved that being soft was not a weakness but a different kind of strength. In the end, Quinn had been right that day in the barn when Harold questioned his choice. The hard land had needed someone soft, someone who could bring gentleness and beauty and culture to a place that could grind people down. And Penelope had needed the hard land too, needed its challenges to discover strengths she never knew she possessed, needed Quinn's steady presence to show her that love could be both gentle and enduring. Their love story was not the dramatic romance of novels, full of grand gestures and passionate declarations. It was quieter, deeper, built on daily choices to honor each other, to work together, to find joy in simple moments. It was a love that weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, that grew stronger with each passing year, rather than fading with familiarity. It was exactly the kind of love story the Wild West needed, proof that even in a hard land during hard times, softness had value, gentleness had power, and love could not only survive but flourish. And it all began with a frightened young woman stepping off a stagecoach and a cowboy who had the wisdom to see that what appeared to be weakness might actually be exactly what he, and the land he loved, needed most.